Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Joined right now by the one, the only Turron Davenport of ESPN, Titans beat writer for ESPN. Turron, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, sure, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. They just wrapped up. They just wrapped up rookie mini camp in Tennessee, and I know for you and probably for a lot of the people there, the focus was in the trenches, right? The focus was what was going on in the trenches. What was your overall takeaway from the time you got to spend looking at the guys with their hand in the dirt over this weekend?
Yeah, I think for me, just overall period was getting to see this coaching staff work with the players for the first time. As a former player, you know how it is. You're always interested in how these guys are able to relate. And you want to see, okay, is this a guy I could have played for? So that was the main thing. Seeing Denard Wilson, I've been so excited about him the whole time, just in talking to him at the press conferences and stuff. So I wanted to see him on the field, the defensive coordinator. And then obviously the big one is Bill Callahan. Seeing him, and I had known for a little bit that he was bringing some new sleds there, a concept that he invented. So that was something I wanted to see. And obviously with T'Vondre Sweat, that is, wanted to see how he was going to work through the drills and work through practice, right? Because so much was made about him as far as being someone who wasn't in shape and had conditioning issues and this, that, and third. But I didn't see any of that.
Yeah, and I want to stay there with you, especially on the look at the offensive line and Coach Callahan and bringing in new sleds and really putting his thumbprint on what he's trying to get done. I had some sound I wanted to play from his son, head coach, Brian Callahan, real quick, just about Coach Bill Callahan bringing in the sleds and what he thought about it.
I don't know if you guys know, I think my dad invented it. So it's designed in a way to more accurately mimic what it feels like to have to clamp and brace on, like what a normal defender would feel like. Some of the old school sleds, they don't really give you that same balance issue, and they're really hard to move. I mean, those I can't tell you how hard those things are to move and to move straight because they tip and they're off balance. They're meant to really stress guys' ability to strengthen their core, keeping their hands tight, and be able to drive the sled vertically as opposed to getting all off kilter. It's a balance thing. So there's a lot of indoctrination that goes into those sleds. Our guys, even now, it's taken them a couple weeks to feel good about moving them the way they're supposed to move. So it's fun to watch. I like watching those guys do it, but they improve pretty quickly. It happens fast.
So and that's Brian Callahan. Some audio you had that you put up on up on your X. And so just wanted to talk about it because I know as a former tight end, being able to understand not just how to engage, but how to engage and control a man on the line of scrimmage is much different. And the sleds that are out, the sleds that most people use, that everyone but Bill Callahan apparently is using, they're not built to understand the way in which a defensive lineman is going to attack you, which is low with their weight over you. They're trying to transition their weight. They're trying to push back on you. So this idea and this concept of a sled that's heavier, that has that overarching angle to it, that you have to get up underneath it before you're able to, extend out on it. The idea that it's not just a flat base, that it's a swivel base where you have to really work on not just driving it, but driving it and keeping it in balance, speaks to some of the genius of Bill Callahan that a lot of people just don't get to know about, because all they really know about Bill Callahan is his time when he was the head coach with the Raiders and they were throwing the ball all over the place. But they don't know that, even at that time, why they were able to throw the ball all over the place, because he had one of the best offensive lines in football. And then two, after he left the Raiders, his journey throughout the NFL has been just being this offensive line guru, like a legitimate guru, not like somebody where they say he's a guru, but people are like, like you can literally track his movement as an offensive line coach and how much better offensive linemen or offensive lines as a whole have been when he's touched them. Pause, no craziness. But just what do you think about that and how all of that is going to play here in Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said it all. I mean, you look at the sleds, the way that they're designed, you have to get low and drive forward. As soon as you raise up, the sled raises up. And it's 380 pounds. And few of the guys, they struggled at first because you're used to hitting the sled a certain way. And this one is different. And I think just the fact that he was able to come up with the concept of having a sled, and even the arms on the sled, it's not shaped like a cross. It's like the arms lean forward a little bit. So it really does make you feel like, well, I can't say make it feel like, it makes it look like you're actually going against a defensive lineman. So it does, as Brian Callahan says, mimic the acts that a defensive lineman will do. So I think that's just really good. And then the coaching that he gives on top, I mean, he's literally on top of the line. Like watching him work with J.C. Latham, I mean, he was literally on top of him. And he's looking at him, and it was something as simple as Latham had his hands. Stay with my coffee real quick. Latham had his hands like they were turned this way a little bit, and he told him like, "Hey, make sure you turn your hands this way." Like he just something as simple as the hand placement on the sled. And then also they got down on their knees and they had to push the sled from their knees, like lunge forward with their knees. And what they had to do is put their forehead, their helmet against the pad. And he was like, get the forehead against the pad. Get your eyes here. The attention to detail, I've never seen it before. And I mean, I watched Jeff Stoutland build Jordan Mailata from a rugby player to a suitable, legit offensive lineman. And then I left and he became one of the better left tackles. So, and Jeff Stoutland has a reputation as being one of the best, and he is one of the best. But just the attention to detail is crazy to me. And then just the positive encouragement too, like how excited he got when they got it right. He was just as excited, if not more, than the players that he was coaching. So I think, that's something when a coach matches or in some cases it exceeds your energy, that's something that gets you through those tough times. And I tell you, individual period for offensive linemen, yeah, good luck to them, man, because it's a lot of work, man. They go and they go. He has two sleds. He calls it one Olga and one Bertha. So the guys are going next to each other, going at Olga, going at Bertha. And then what wasn't shown, because they didn't use it, is another sled with a concept that he invented. And it's a 5-man sled. And it's kind of like in a circle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I would imagine it's kind of like the, bull in the ring where, you stand there and he'll say like 1 and you hit this one, or 3, you hit that one, and those types of things. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that works too. But you mentioned Bill Callahan with the Raiders, was it Barry Sims? He was a right tackle. He converted to a left tackle, right? That's what he's doing with J.C. Latham. Then you move on to Tyron Smith, who played some left tackle initially at USC, but then mostly right tackle. First year with the Cowboys, he was a right tackle. Then Callahan got there, I think, in 2012, and they flipped him to left side. And we know Tyron Smith has become one of the best left tackles ever. And you look at Jedrick Wills Jr., he's another one, not an all-pro, Pro Bowl or anything like that, but a very key piece to that Cleveland Browns offensive line, which you saw with Wyatt Teller. Obviously, they signed Jack Conklin. That offensive, Joe Patonio, that offensive line just took off and has consistently been one of the best. And there's no coincidence that Bill Callahan was the coach there. So his work is there. There's proof of what he's able to do. And it's just funny because he's like this little man, you know what I mean? and you just associate offensive line with size, but you got this little man standing next to J.C. Latham. While Latham is on his knees against the pad, and they're the same height. It's just funny, man. And then he's just barking at him the whole time, right in his ear, and it was funny.
Quick audio from J.C. Latham that you got from him talking about working on those sleds.
Yeah, I mean it's 3'8", 380 pounds. At Bama we have a sled similar to it, not exactly like that, but we just put our coaches on it. So it's kind of the same in that sense, but I mean it really emphasizes technique. On my first rep where he wanted us to move it, I shot out my hips and kind of got it straight up. And if you get it straight up, you're not going to move it as a D lineman. It'll be a stalemate. So you really kind of got to gradually drive as you rise with your hips. So that's something that I was learning as I went. But I really emphasize technique though.
Yeah, and so I mean he's talking about it. Yeah, it seems like everyone has something similar or tries to recreate something similar, but the fact that Callahan has taken it as far as to have a full design of something different, definitely speaks to his level of acumen. What else stood out to you while watching the guys in the trenches work over the weekend?
Yeah, T'Vondre Sweat was fun to watch. His feet are really good. I watched him on the bags, and I asked him after practice about that because I'm always intrigued by those big guys like that with the feet. I remember T.R. Tart was like that, and T.R. Tart was a hooper. Watching T'Vondre Sweat at the Senior Bowl, you saw it too. So I remember talking to him at the Senior Bowl about whether or not he was a former hooper, and he was a power forward, a pretty good one apparently. And so I asked him about that and just how that transfers to the footwork and the stuff that you have to do. And yeah, you could definitely tell he made it through the drills. I mean, yeah, he put his helmet up, and some of these, it's funny, man. Like you got these guys who, never even took part in the practice and don't understand, anything that they're watching. And one of the radio guys out here critiqued him because, he was the only one with his helmet up in between drills. His conditioning is bad. It's like, come on, man. Like, it's just stop, So you get a little of that, but he made it through every drill. The bag drill, he did really good with that. You could hear the power, feel the power when he struck the bags, and he did it with some speed. And that's another thing. Like, there was one drill that they did on the bags, and I posted it, and somebody was like, "Oh, he's slow." And it's like, listen, this drill isn't meant for speed. It's meant to see how explosive you could be, how you could turn your hips and get power out of your hips with each time you strike the bag. And it's just funny. A lot of people don't really know what they're watching, and they critique. And I call it arrogant ignorance, because that's a whole nother thing we can get into. But I don't like that. But he looked good going through the drills and stuff like that. And I was pleased with what I saw. I was impressed.
Well, TD, I mean, you're on the right place. I mean, you're at the right place. If you want to throw a little spice at some people, it's all right. You're in the right area. Because I want to go back to that, but first I wanted to mention, or I wanted to talk about the interactions that I saw that were from you and then from others who were getting audio of T'Vondre Sweat and him talking to the media. It seemed to me that he was a lot more reserved, a lot more calculated in his response. Not as free willing dealing as he kind of was throughout the draft process. Do you think that it's possible somebody probably got in his ear and said, "Hey, let's ease into this thing"?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think another thing that it probably was is because I asked him, I tried to get him to speak on it, but I think there's another thing where he's kind of taking it a little more serious just because, he has some image rebuilding to do, so to speak, right? They dropped this label of class clown and party animal on him. And obviously with the DWI, it's he does have some image repair. And I wonder if that's a part of it, where he's trying to get back. Okay, yeah, that's behind me. Now I can go ahead and be loose. And the sense of urgency, right, with this being a time, okay, hey, this is the start of something where I got to get it together, make that impression.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, and maybe this speaks more to the transition that the NFL is making, right? But I thought it was interesting because in many other years, he would have been a first round draft pick. Like in many years, a talent like this to be that big, that athletic, that strong, that disruptive, that is a guy who's going to go in the first round. When you harken back to those dudes who fit that profile, the Vince Will folks and things of that, people of that nature. I was surprised that he went where he went. Is it all just image stuff, or do you think it's just also, hey, the way that the league has transitioned, guys like him aren't really in vogue right now?
Yeah, I think a true nose tackle doesn't have the same value as it once did. I definitely think that's the case. But it's funny because you talk about narratives and you talk about imaging and stuff like that. And obviously, draft Twitter, it is what it is. But so many of these cats are like, oh, he didn't play enough snaps. He didn't. But these are the same folks that got Byron Murphy, and no slight on Byron Murphy, the other D tackle from Texas that went first round. These are guys that would say he was a surefire first round pick. Well, guess who played more snaps? Sweat did per game. And then the other thing is, he didn't just stumble upon the Outland Trophy award, right? Like, you don't just win that. You gotta be a beast, a monster to win it. And then also, if you watch games, a lot of Byron Murphy's play was off of sweat. So it is funny to me how at 38, he's supposedly a reach. And that's one thing I will give the Titans credit for throughout the process. Because, I'm talking back in the last week of March, first week of April, I'm saying, hey, Darius Robinson, I think that would be a good pick for you guys at 38. And then the people I talked to, they're like, yeah, but what about Sweat? What would you do if Sweat was there? And I was like, honestly, I thought he was a first round talent, but you know what I mean? So, yeah, they identified him and stuck to it. And I feel that that's someone that they figured that they would get at 38. And they were convinced, unless something crazy happened as far as the deal. And it almost did. The Rams were looking to move up, but their deal got sweetened after the Titans took Sweat, and that's when they, made the trade to move up to 39 and get Braden Fisk.
No, I'm with you on that. If somebody would have asked me what about taking Sweat at 38, I'd have been like, he's not going to be there. Like, that's what my response would have been. Hey, that'd be great, but he's not going to be there. We're talking to Turron Davenport of ESPN, Titans beat reporter. You can follow him on X at @TDavenport_NFL. I wanted to go back to something that you were talking about. You were talking about people not understanding what they're watching on the field, and that got me to thinking. In a group, we talk a lot about representation, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that when you look out at a practice or a media availability, when you look around, it's not just about not seeing a lot more black faces, which we don't see a lot more of. But what we really don't see a lot of is people who really actually know and understand football. Mm-hmm. So when we're getting the information from the people who have been hired to disseminate the information, you're getting information from somebody that doesn't really know or understand what they're looking for, and that causes the frustration that you were talking about early on. What have you done specifically? Because one of the things that I think, and this is my view, obviously biased because you my guy, right? But unbiased in the fact that I believe that we try to make each other better. I think one of the things that you've been able to do that has helped you be so effective in your job is the people who actually do the jobs know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Right?
that's key. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you rely on past playing experience, conversations that you have. Like I love watching practice with Coach Mack, Dave McGinnis. Love watching practice. Sometimes I'll just like if you don't see videos from practice, it's because I was standing next to him. You know what I mean? And it happens sometimes, like walking out, he'll be standing there and he'll stop me and we'll talk. And next thing I know, like it's already time to go back because they're getting ready to go to special teams period and we can't watch that. You know what I mean? But just standing there and talking to him and talking to people like that. I mean, there's other coaches and stuff that you get to talk to. And so you learn a lot from them. And then just, I don't know, it just with watching, you just start to understand things more as well, and just research and watching coaches talk, discuss things. That's one of the things that stood out to me about Brian Callahan. If you remember early in the process, because I remember we had a conversation about it. You were like, why not Aaron Glenn? And I'm like, yo, Brian Callahan is that dude. And it was because I was watching some of his coach tape and how he was explaining things. And I'm like, yeah. So there's a lot to it, man.
Yeah, and I mean, I still like Aaron Glenn for the record. Still
Don't
like
get it
Aaron
twisted.
Glenn.
I like him too. And you talking about talking with
needs
coaches?
to be a head coach. Yeah.
You talking about talking with coaches? Got to talk to him at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
Or no, not the Senior Bowl, the Combine. Excuse me. Energy, man. Energy.
Lots of energy, and again, I'm a fan of guys who've done it, being able to ascend up the ladder and get to the position, because there's so many people in that position who have never done it. And so when I see the guys who have done it and they actually want to be at that, what I've learned, right? So I had to temper my my expectations. Some guys just don't want to be head coaches, right? So there are a bunch of former players who are on staffs that are just happy to be the linebackers coach, happy to be the O-line coach, happy to be the linebacker, the DBs coach. They don't have the desire to have that responsibility of head coach on them. But the guys that do, that tells me a lot about them, right? The guys that have that thought process, I want to be the head guy. It tells me a lot. So I like the opportunity of those. I like I like for those guys to get that opportunity. And so it's not a shade against Brian Callahan. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's doing, because so far, everything that I've heard out of Tennessee has been positive about what's going on there right now. And the vibe that's different now than was different at this time last year, right?
It is. And then talking to, a couple of the players, they said that guys aren't afraid to mess up. And I'm just like, wow, like you're still in phase 2 and that's coming out. So it's just, I want to see really as the year goes on how it is. That whole, and it's funny because Brian Callahan on Friday, he said he wants guys to make sure that they don't have that fear of failure. It just hit me that he said that. And then after that, talking to a couple of the players, they said that that's the case. So it's interesting. But then also, I think you look at the way he's allowed Denard Wilson and Rand Carthon to just put that defense together. Because make no mistake about it, that defense, the coaching staff has Rand Carthon's stamp on it too, right? Because he has history with Steve Jackson. He has history with Frank. How does his last name slip my mind? His last name slipped my mind. The LB coach, the inside backers coach, Tracy Rocker. And it's funny, I told Rand, I said that defensive staff be putting together, man. Like he has history with Denard Wilson too. Frank Bush is his name. I said that defensive staff be putting together, man. It looks like that movie Harlem Nights, and he started cracking up because it is outside of like Lori Locust, who is the house with the outside linebackers. I mean, the staff defensively is basically all black. So like, y'all look like Harlem Nights, man.
Hey, and not for nothing, because people might just want to look at the surface level of Harlem Nights, but it's not just that they're all black. Is that they're all black and they all are like super talented at what they do, and they connect well together. Like that's the difference. It's like we just didn't go get a bunch of black dudes and get them jobs and say, hey, look what we did. They went out and got some really, really talented people in their positions and allowed them to come together like Voltron, and hopefully the product is shown on the field, because that defense needs to take a step. Like for all of the additions, right? For all the additions, you're still working with a dude that I am not sold at as a starting quarterback in the NFL. And you got receivers in place for that man to be able to shine. You have improvements that you're making to the offensive line via drafting a high level guy and bringing in the best dude in the business. You brought in a different type of running back, so now you're going to have a different look to the running game, a running game that might actually better serve what the offense wants to do, right? That defense is going to have to hold it down until that man pulling the trigger really comes into his own, if he's going to come into his own, right? That's going to be the thing. And so I thought last year too predictable, too vanilla on defense. I'm really looking forward to seeing the dynamic part of the defense come out. I just thought it was way too formulaic. I watched Titans film the other day because the former defensive coordinator is now the defensive coordinator at with
Shane
the Giants.
Bowen.
Yeah, and so I'm watching the defense, and in my brain I'm going, oh, I like pre-snap, I know what they're in. Post-snap, they're in the same thing.
There wasn't a lot of switching the pitcher and those types of things. I know they didn't really trust their secondary. They didn't trust their secondary.
And you can tell. You can 100% tell in the way in which they masked everything. So it made me go, I don't know what this dude's going to be like as a defensive coordinator in New York, because of what I saw, in Tennessee over the last couple of seasons. So it'll be interesting to see the dynamic come back. Like how are we going to really, really strike, really make this thing, pop, really give something that offensive coordinators have to think about. What's next? What's next for the Titans coming up in what you'll be covering for them?
Yeah, I'm working on some things with Will Levis. It's funny you mentioned. I spent yesterday and Friday with him at a passing camp that he had. A guy by the name of Rob Williams, QB Motion. He's from Canada, and he came down. They've worked together since Levis, his last year at Penn State, and you've just seen him progress. Fundamental, like technique wise and stuff. But anyway, they had a camp. So I spent some time with him. I'm working on some things on Levis. His stories always do well. So we have that. Nothing going on this week. Next week, there's going to be, I believe, some availability. So it's just kind of touch and go. Got the schedule release coming. Have a story on that, but it's the downtime. So.
And the next time the team's on the field together, that's for OTAs, or is that, will that not be until?
Yeah, it's OTAs. It's going to be, I think it's May 20th, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I saw one of the clips of that you had up on X with Levis, and it looked like they were working on being able to flip the hips when you're escaping opposite your hand, right? Being able to flip the hips and deliver the ball. I actually work a lot on this technique with my quarterbacks, and not necessarily backpedaling, but definitely flipping the hips and getting those hips directed in the right way. But when you've got a guy that's athletic like Levis is, it makes sense to take advantage of all his athleticism, right?
Yeah.
If you have the ability to scramble and get out of there, all right, let's develop the ability to be able to pivot, get your hips in a position to be able to deliver the ball and then throw it accurately. So I like the fact that he's still out there working and adding tools to the toolbox. I don't want Will Levis to fail, Titans fans out there.
You're just saying you don't predict it. And let me say this though, Rob Williams, if you get a chance, go to QB Motion and watch some of the stuff, because I will tell you, so Friday, we got out there about 6 o'clock. We started, and from 6 to like 7:30, 7:45 was all focused. They didn't even, so after an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, they were just getting to actually throwing the football. The mechanics that he was working on with the feet and with the hips and knowing how to, man, it was, I was so impressed. And when I say he, I'm talking about Rob Williams, the QB coach. What he did, he took like kinesiology. Like, he doesn't know anything about football. He's going to tell you cover 2, cover 4, and he'll admit it. But when it comes to actually building into throwing the football, the dude is a mastermind. And he took kinesiology and mixed it with quarterback mechanics and a lot of things that, quarterbacks typically are taught, like, to lead that front arm to follow. He goes over, he calls it a baby wing. And he just talks about leaving it dead and then following through. And then when you follow through, you slap your thigh. And we just got to watch them go structure from the foundation up, man. It was check some of the stuff out. He talked about keeping the ball high, right? And he said, imagine yourself, you and a friend, you're at the beach in the water and you're having a catch. He said, you want to make sure you don't throw your friend a wet ball, right? Because a lot of quarterbacks, they hold it like down here and they come like this and throw. He's like, you're wasting a lot of time and movement. So he's like, you hold it here and you come here and throw. That Aaron Rodgers type of quick release. So it's really interesting. A lot of the stuff he did. Definitely check him out.
It's interesting what you were talking about with it, because when I talk to my quarterbacks, I tell them, think about, like, you've got the burger. Like, this is the burger. You're hungry. You don't want the burger to get too far away from your mouth because you're hungry. You're just trying to get it down. You're trying to get it down as much as possible. And then I always teach to put the seatbelt on, right? When you throw, you're clicking the seatbelt.
That's a great analogy.
To click the seatbelt, you've gotta bring that hand down and click it to that other side.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to hear people, different words, different terminology, but same thought process, same philosophy involved in it. So great to hear that he's working. I know we'll look forward to seeing that piece when you drop that piece. We look forward to all the work. I'm sure you'll be back when schedule release comes around and it'll get all hype again about what's to come. Turron, I really appreciate it. Again, if you're not following this gentleman, make sure you follow him on X at Turron.
T Davenport underscore
T
NFL.
Davenport underscore NFL. T Davenport underscore NFL. Turron, I appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you here soon.
For sure. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Stay tuned, because when we come back, we'll be talking more about the hits of the day. It's a lot of stuff going on out there, a lot of things that you want to know on, a lot of things that I got to heat it up on. This Talk Spicy on the Riptide Media Networks.